Now, Vanessa, let me welcome you to the program. And well, kind of in a sense, staying in the same vein, because we're talking about data collection, bulk data collection in the broad sense, but actually looking in a bit more detail at what we were talking about on Monday with respect to anti-Semitism.
Well, anti-Semitism, Unit 8200, and censorship and thought control, basically, by Israeli organizations. So this was an article that did actually appear in The Guardian. I think it was first published at the end of June and then was updated. Exclusive Israeli documents show expansive government effort to shape US discourse around the Gaza war. So let's have a look at what it actually says. The authors of this article are Fang and I've got Mike Poulson, I think. So last November, just weeks into the war in Gaza, Amichai, particularly a brash 42-year-old Likud minister, so the same party as is led by Netanyahu, was called into the Knesset to brief lawmakers on what could be done about rising anti-war protests from young people across the United States, especially at elite universities. He's since led a targeted push to counter critics of Israel, and The Guardian has uncovered evidence showing how Israel has relaunched a controversial entity as part of a broader public relations campaign to target said protests at US college campuses. So let's have a look. The Concert, which is basically this nexus of organizations that are also described as a PR commando unit, referred to a sprawling relaunch of a controversial Israeli government program initially known as Killer Shlomo, designed to carry out what Israel called very sinister mass consciousness activities targeted largely at the US and Europe. Concert is now known as the Voices of Israel, previously worked with groups spearheading a campaign to pass so-called anti-BDS state laws that penalize Americans for engaging in boycotts or any other nonviolent protest of Israel. So then let's have a look at what they then say. It's worth reading this whole article because it is very detailed. Another group, CyberWell, a pro-Israel anti-disinformation group, led by former Israeli military intelligence and Voices officials, the Voices of Israel, has established itself as an official trusted partner to TikTok, Meta, helping both social platforms screen and edit content. A recent CyberWell report called for Meta to suppress the popular slogan "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," unfortunately not explaining that that was actually a statement put out by the Likud party originally. A spokesperson for CyberWell responded that it receives no government funding whatsoever from any country, and the organization's leadership is neither affiliated with nor compensated by Voices for Israel. The spokesperson added that CyberWell's funding comes from private donors from across a broad spectrum of political, religious, and communal interests committed to combating digital anti-Semitism. Well, that's very interesting because what I actually discovered when I started looking into this, when Mike pointed me towards this labyrinth bunny hole, was that the original authors had actually written a follow-up article on Fang's private Substack, pro-Israel group censoring social media, led by former Israeli intelligence officers. Again, I really recommend reading this. It's full of details that were not in the Guardian original article. So what does he then say? He basically points out that when CyberWell was reached for comment regarding why the biographies of its staff and advisors were removed or were scrubbed from their website after the Guardian article, they said, highlighting the danger of generating false and misleading information, we were forced to remove the Our Team page for safety reasons. Following the publication of your story, our analysts were attacked and identified by name on X. Users shared your article and our employees' names with a wider network, and we became concerned for our staff's safety. Despite CyberWell's denial of ties to Voices of Israel, the organization's 2022 annual report listed its chief financial officer as Sagi Balasha, the first CEO of the organization, now known as Voices of Israel. The list of CyberWell advisors in the report also included IDF forces, Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, who was Israeli corporate records revealed to be a director of the research and intelligence arm of Voices, known as Keshet David, which is Hebrew for David's bow. Keshet David was initially headed by Yossi Kuperwasser, the former head of research in the IDF Military Intelligence Directorate, widely known as Amman, and an ex-director general of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. Another advisor to CyberWell, Amos Yadlin, previously led Amman. Now, in the article, they also then go on to point out, so the chief executive of CyberWell and two board members worked at the same private intel spin-off from Voices for Israel, and the director of this spin-off is an advisor to CyberWell. The CEO of Voices for Israel became effectively the CFO of CyberWell. So CyberWell was lying in their statement to The Guardian. So you have the executive director and founder, Tal Or Cohen Montameya, and Zohar Gorgel, a decorated IDF intelligence officer with over a decade of experience in various cyber and technology roles. Zohar spearheaded the effort against incitement to terror on social media platforms during the 2015-2016 wave of terrorism in Israel. And Zohar is a social and tech entrepreneur running fintech startup. So there you have immediately the connection to 8200, but it goes on. If we look at our story, so basically here it states that it was established between Talor and Zohar Gorgel. And then if we go on and look at other employees within the organization, so you have here Jonathan Hezroni, the digital policy and compliance analyst. He holds an MA in government, summa cum laude, and an LLB with distinction in law from Reichman University. Jonathan was admitted into the Israeli Bar Association in 2022 as a former analyst and analyst team leader in the research department of the IDF, military intelligence. He has extensive experience. And then if we look at the advisor, which was mentioned in the Li Fang subsequent article to The Guardian article, Major General Amos Yadlin, with over 40 years of service in the IDF. Yadlin served as the former chief of the IDF's military intelligence. So he was the chief, basically, we assume, of at least of one of the units, including perhaps the 8200. Prior to that, he served as defense attaché to the United States. Recently, Amos completed his position as the director of the Institute for National Security Studies at Tel Aviv University. And then when I basically went to the CyberWell website, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, Mike and I had a slight disagreement of this. I feel that it is being basically slightly hidden from view. They are proudly funded, if I then blow up what it says in that bottom right-hand corner, proudly funded by the UGA JA Federation New York, United Jewish Appeal, the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies in New York, which is clearly part of the Zionist movement nexus, which is encouraging operations like the birthright voyages to Israel. In other words, the indoctrination of young Jewish teenagers and even younger in the United States. Then I started to look into the board of the UJA New York, and you here have Linda Morels. You can freeze frame this to read about her on the website. But what was really interesting, when I went to her LinkedIn profile, guess who she used to work for? For 15 years and 4 months, she was at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, board member, so from January 2017 until fairly recently, April 2023. And prior to that, she was a board member at the Tony Blair Faith Foundation. Isn't that bizarre that Tony Blair's name crops up in what is effectively a Zionist nexus? So coming back to CyberWell, this was part of their recommendations to the Meta oversight board. So CyberWell suggests the following content moderation measures be applied from the militarized group's approach to the phrase from the river to the sea, due to the real world harm being committed under the slogan. So they're talking basically about posts on X and Facebook, Instagram, all of the meta complex, basically. So reduce ranking in the newsfeed, reduce in search, reviewing related hashtags that are sparking or mobilizing real world harm, prohibit use of ads, fundraisers, commerce surfaces, and monetization tools when using this phrase. And then from their website itself, these are basically quick facts 2023. So it's saying it was founded in 2022. It monitors 5 platforms: X, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube in 2 languages, Arabic and English, location in Tel Aviv. 6,000 pieces of content vetted and counting. 150,000 pieces of content flagged as highly likely to be anti-Semitic, waiting for review. And what is their success rate on getting this content removed? 32.1% average rate of removal across all platforms in 2023. There it says data speaks louder than words. So here we have Unit 8200, effectively Israeli military spy unit, censoring posts on all of the Meta platforms and getting them removed. And I can't recommend again and again highly enough to listen to the interview that Mike and I did with David Miller on the Zionist movement in Britain, but he does also include the United States. But I think the more we go into this, Mike, the more really sinister this entire movement is and how it's affecting every sector of our daily lives, basically, and our freedom of speech.
Absolutely. And it's a huge infrastructure, a huge network with huge amounts of money. And of course, when we've got companies that are spawned through Unit 8200 doing this kind of work, at the same time they're doing so-called cybersecurity work, and therefore getting, everybody requires to have cybersecurity software. So they're getting paid huge amounts of money every month in subscription fees and so on. This is it's a good business model for them, but and hugely influential. So keep watching for more on this. Vanessa, let's speak to you again, and this time Middle East and, well, the expansion of the conflict into Yemen.
Yep, the expansion of the conflict into Yemen by Israel directly. In other words, Israel attacks Yemen directly, not through proxies as it has been doing since 2015, working through Saudi Arabia and the UAE, with, of course, also US and UK backing to try and decimate the country of Yemen. So basically on Saturday, Israel struck the Yemen port of Hodeidah after Ansarullah resistance movement, always described as Houthi rebels in Western media, attacked Tel Aviv. So what happened with the attack on Tel Aviv? Here, I just point out that all Israelis, this was from an article in Haaretz quite recently, all Israelis instinctively understand that a strike on Tel Aviv represents a strike on Israel's ability to lead a normal life in wartime. We can do without Eilat, Sderot, Matura, Kafr Blum, but we can't without Tel Aviv. And I would also point out, the Yemeni drone, which traveled over 2,300 miles, traversing Libya and Sudan to reach its target, an area very close to the US embassy, that in fact the Harkiria central military base, which is a huge area, is in the center of Tel Aviv. So when Israel is claiming that Hamas is basically leading to the death of civilians in Gaza, which is a concentration camp, Israeli military is placed in the center of Tel Aviv in civilian areas. CNN and virtually every single Western media outlet echoing, of course, the Israeli line that basically Hodeidah had been used to attack international shipping in the Red Sea, but also to receive weapons from Iran. This is basically not true, because Hodeidah was the only humanitarian aid entry into Yemen for the 23 million starving Yemeni people that have been under a blockade enforced by the UN since 2015. So a quick look at where Hodeidah is on the map of Yemen. It's over to the west there on the Red Sea coast. An image of the flames that rose after the targeting of the Hodeidah port area and the oil company, which led to the death of 6 Yemeni oil company employees and the injury of perhaps more than 83 civilians. These were satellite images, put together by Maxar Technologies, just showing pre the attack and then the various stages of damage to Hodeidah port during the Israeli attack. 12 F-35s took off from the Nevatim airbase, I believe, were refueled in the air and traveled 1,800 kilometers to carry out this fairly devastating attack. However, the officials did put out a statement within 6 hours to say that, in fact, electricity had been restored to most areas that depend on supply from Hodeidah itself. And as I said, what is interesting, and yes, this is an escalation because this is a direct attack by Israel, from Israel, not basically apparently condoned by the US or the UK. And what this will do, as the Yemenis have stated very clearly, it will lead to an expansion of their attacks on Israel. And of course, the attack on Tel Aviv was a demonstration of their ability to do so and to bypass the Israeli air defense. So first of all, there is recent news that Yemen, Ansarullah, the resistance movement, have opened a military coordination office in Iraq to collaborate with the Iraqi resistance, which of course regularly carry out attacks against Israeli targets from inside Syria. And then you have in Al-Mayadin, Ansarullah warned swift and unprecedented retaliation to Israel. And within that article, we can see Hazem al-Assad had added that the Zionist enemy has opened the gates of hell by targeting Yemen's Hodeidah port and the port's military and security centers deep inside the occupied Palestinian territories will be under the fire of the Yemeni army. He stressed that certain Arab countries have crossed the red lines by supporting the Zionist enemy, opening land corridors in lieu of the Red Sea, which is the United Arab Emirates, and opening their airspace, which is Jordan and I believe Saudi Arabia, which provided intelligence previously, and calling the Hamas movement terrorist. We warn them that their answer is on the way. So very clearly, we're seeing an expansion and an escalation in the region.
Thank you, Vanessa.